Hey guys, as you can see, I'm not at church. I am here at my house where, just like you, I've been spending lots of time lately. But I wanted to share a favorite book with you today. It's called The Storm That Stopped, and it's based on Mark 4:35 to 41, which is the same scripture that your family Sunday school lesson for this week is based on. You might have heard this book at Sunday school or wow at some point, but I'm hoping that you'll enjoy it again anyway. And then when the story, or before the story starts, you'll hear me read from Mark 35 to 41. And then after we're through reading, I'll be back. Enjoy.
Jesus calms the storm. Mark 4. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was, in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." The Storm That Stopped, written by Allison Mitchell, illustrated by Catalina Echeverry. A true story about who Jesus really is. The One day, long ago, Jesus was teaching people by the sea. Soon, some more people arrived, then others, then more and more, until there were people everywhere. "We can't hear back here. Give me some room. Be quiet. I can't see." The crowds were just too big. No one could see Jesus, and no one could hear Jesus. So Jesus asked his friends, the disciples, to push their boat out into the water. He sat in the boat, and the huge crowd spread out along the beach. Now they could all see and hear Jesus as he told them all about God. When he finished teaching the people, Jesus said to his friends, "Let's go over to the other side of the sea." Jesus had finished teaching the crowd, and now he had something to teach his friends, but they didn't know it yet. So they all jumped in the boat with him and set sail across the sea. Jesus was so tired. He'd been teaching the people all day, so he lay down in the back of the boat and fell fast asleep. It was a quiet evening. The water gently lapped against the boat, and the sun slowly set in the sky. Jesus was sleeping. The disciples were quietly talking. Then all of a sudden, they were in the middle of the biggest, loudest, scariest, most ginormous storm you could imagine. The wind blew hard. The waves grew huge. The water poured into the boat. But Jesus was asleep. The wind blew harder. The waves grew huger. The water filled the boat. But Jesus was still asleep. "Jesus! Wake up! Wake up! We're drowning! Don't you care?" What a silly thing to say to Jesus. Of course he cared. He loved his friends so much that one day he was going to die for them. Jesus stood up in the boat. The wind was still blowing. The waves were bigger than ever. The water was pouring into the boat quicker than the disciples could tip it out again. The boat was sinking. But then Jesus did something amazing. He didn't help his friends pour the water out of the boat. He didn't help them try to row back to land. Jesus simply spoke. But he didn't speak to the disciples. He spoke to the storm, to the wind, and to the waves. Quiet, be still. Just 3 little words, and the storm stopped. Right away, at that very moment, the sea was quiet, still, and calm. Then Jesus looked at his friends. Why are you so afraid? Do you still not trust me? But they were terrified, and they asked each other, who is this? Even the waves and the wind do what he says. This is what Jesus wanted to teach them. He wanted them to know who he really is. The disciples already knew a lot about God from his special book. They knew that God made everything. He made the world, he made the sun and the moon and the stars, and he made the sea and the wind as well. They knew that only God can tell the sea what to do, that only God can tell the wind when to blow or the waves when to crash. Only God can do those things. But the disciples had just seen Jesus do the same things God can do. So what is the answer to their question? Who is Jesus? Jesus is God. Tales that tell the truth. How do we know about the storm that stopped? The account of Jesus calming the storm was written down for us by Mark, a friend of Jesus' disciple Peter, in the New Testament part of the Bible. You will find it in Mark 4, verses 35 to 41. At the end of this true story, the disciples ask each other, who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. The rest of Mark's book shows us the answer to their question. Jesus is able to do things that only God can do. For example, in Psalm 107, verses 23 to 32, it is God who saves some sailors by calming a storm. So, who is Jesus? He is the Son of God. That brings us to this week's Family Fun Challenge. There are 2 other versions of this story in 2 other Gospels. In Matthew 8:23 to 27 and Luke 8:22 to 25. I've talked with the kids several times about how when the same idea or the same story appears in the Bible more than once, we know that there are sometimes some small differences or a different perspective that is given by another person. But we also know that if it's in the Bible more than once, it must be really important. So read these other accounts with your family from Matthew and Luke. Then if you'll send me an email or a text to tell me that you and your family read them, and I'll put your name in a drawing for a fun prize to be mailed to you. If you want an extra challenge, you can tell me how alike or different these scriptures are from the one that I read earlier in Mark 35 to 41.
Hey, thanks for reading with me today. I miss you and I'm praying for you and your families. Can't wait to see you soon. Bye.